The engine cut out, and slowly the black Ford 8 motor car coasted to a halt. Yet, despite the winter darkness, it did not go unnoticed. From his vantage point in a field beside Moulton Hall Farm, Winsford, in the northwest of England, the farmer watched the man exit the car, shiftily look around, and then briskly walk up the dirt track and disappear into the night. It was Thursday evening, the 3rd of January, 1946. Making his way to work on the following morning, the farmer noticed that the car was still there. He reported it to the local police, and within a short time, a constable was sent to investigate. He noted the registration number, DNC 977, saw there were some eggs on the back seat, and taking a look around the immediate area, spotted a loose-leaf pocketbook lying beside the car. He reported his findings back at the station, and investigation soon found that the vehicle was registered to the Refuge Lending Society in Manchester and was the company car of their managing clerk, 37-year-old Bernard Phillips, whose wife Kitty had reported him missing when he failed to return to their home in Prestwich on the previous evening. Phillips had left the office with a client to authorise a loan and had not been seen or heard of since. The whereabouts of the missing clerk was revealed on the following afternoon. It was approaching tea time and two young brothers, 15-year-old Fred Threadgold and 13-year-old Donald, were making their way back to their home on Deakins Road, Winsford. Pushing a barrow, they made their way along a footpath that ran beside the Liverpool to Crewe railway line before crossing the snow-covered field next to Smallcall Bridge. As they approached the apex, the barrow got stuck in the mud. Fred happened to look down the embankment leading to the railway tracks, where he saw a bundle lying at the bottom in a culvert. Climbing over a fence, they scurried down until they could clearly make out what had attracted their attention. Partly hidden in the undergrowth was the body of a man. They hurried away, told their parents what they had discovered, and the police were soon at the scene. The location of the body was just 400 yards from the abandoned car. There were no personal possessions on the body. The police quickly identified it as that of Bernard Phillips. Superintendent Fred Platt of Cheshire CID was detailed to handle the investigation. It was a second murder case in as many weeks for the experienced detective, having recently solved the murder of a barmaid at Neston on the Wirral Peninsula. Chester-based Home Office pathologist Dr. Walter Grace attended the scene and, on moving the body, found the murder weapon underneath. It was a commando knife, and a post-mortem found that the victim had been stabbed below the left shoulder and that the knife had entered the lung between the third and fourth rib. Grace found that death had occurred around 24 hours earlier. Detectives soon learned that the commando bayonet was identical to one owned by Harold Berry, a 30-year-old father of four who worked as a watchman at Winsford's CWS bacon factory. Officers called at his house at 5 Laidwood Street and found that he wasn't at home, with his wife suggesting to the officers that he was probably in London with the wife of a soldier he had been carrying on with. Several of Berry's friends and workmates were questioned, and from them they were led to believe that Berry was due back in the northwest on Monday, and that he planned to visit a house in Pendleton, Salford. Officers decided on a stakeout, and an around-the-clock watch was made on the house. Tracing events that led to the death of Bernard Phillips took police back to the previous autumn, when Harold Berry had first met 21-year-old Irene Wynne, the pretty wife of a soldier serving overseas. Irene also worked at the bacon factory, and the two first got together when the firm arranged a works outing to Manchester's Bellevue to celebrate the first peacetime Christmas. Following the outing, the couple saw each other again on the next day, and during the following month they met up to 3 times a week, often drinking in pubs and clubs around Northwich. With her husband serving overseas, Irene had returned to live with her mother, and with Berry having a wife and 4 children at home, their courting was limited to furtive kisses in bus shelters and on park benches. Wanting some time together, Berry decided to plan a romantic weekend in London's West End. He asked Irene to accompany him, and she agreed at once. As pleased as he was with his acceptance, this now presented Berry with a problem. His meagre wages as a night watchman at the bacon factory were barely enough to support his wife and family, let alone pay for 3 nights of passion in the West End. He needed money to finance his romance. After much deliberation, he thought of a solution to his problem. At 11 o'clock on Thursday morning, the 3rd of January, Berry called into the offices of the Refuse Lending Society on Manchester's busy Market Street, asking for a loan of £50. Asked to fill in a number of forms, he signed them as George Wood, a poultry farmer of Moss Side Road Farm, Tarporley, Cheshire. Bernard Phillips told the customer that because of the size of the loan, he would have to visit the address in person to verify the claim before he could authorise release of the money. Phillips told him he would arrange to call on Sunday afternoon, as it would be a nice drive out for him and his wife. This didn't suit Mr. Wood's plans at all. The loan, he stressed, was urgent. After consulting his diary, the manager told him to come back that afternoon and they could sort it out then. But shortly after 2 p.m, Berry and the manager, with a suitcase containing the money, set out in the black Ford 8. Irene Wynne had meanwhile told her mother she was going to spend the weekend with a friend and had taken a suitcase to work with her. Berry subsequently arrived at the factory and waited for Irene to finish her shift. They called into a local public house and after a drink they were given a lift to Sale, where they caught a bus into Manchester, spending the night with a friend before catching the morning train to London and checking in at the Euston Hotel. The couple caught the Monday afternoon express back to Manchester, and at 7 p.m, Superintendent Platt received word that Berry had entered a house on Seedley Road, Pendleton. Accompanied by his sergeant, Platt went to the address, questioned Berry. Asked to empty his pockets, Berry produced a wallet and cigarette lighter, found to be the property of Bernard Phillips. He was placed under arrest and taken to Northwich Police Station, where later that night he was charged with murder. Less than a month later, Harold Berry found himself in the dock at Cheshire Assizes in Chester. Mr Justice Stable presided, while Mr Glyn Jones KC led for the prosecution, Berry's defence handled by Mr Edmund Davis. He pleaded not guilty to the charge. There was a great deal of excitement in the first major post-war local murder trial, and witnesses queued with flasks and sandwiches to take their place in the gallery at the historic courthouse. The first witness for the prosecution was a friend of the accused from Winsford, who testified that shortly before Christmas 1945 he had sold Berry a commando knife for 10 shillings. The knife, recovered from beside the body, was firmly established as a murder weapon and was held up in court. A witness who knew Berry well told the court he had seen him catching a Manchester-bound bus on Thursday the 3rd of January, and Annie Germain, a cashier at the Refuse Lending Society, identified Berry as the man who had signed the paperwork as George Wood and who had left the office in the company of Mr Phillips. Cross-examined by Mr Edwin Davis, Miss Germain admitted that she had initially told the police that the man who had left with Mr Phillips had fur hair. Berry was asked to stand up in court and it was clear that his dark hair could in no way be said to be fur. The defence also managed to further discredit this witness by saying that, although she would now say the man in the dock was the man who had left with the manager that afternoon, she had failed to pick him out of an identity parade on the day after his arrest. Berry was identified by several witnesses from London to whom he had given money to. Money since found to have been issued to Bernard Phillips on the day he disappeared. Due to procedures at the time, Berry had signed his name on the back of each of the notes. The court also heard that at 3:30 on the afternoon of 3rd of January, Berry turned up at the CWS farm in Roden, Wellington, Shropshire in a motor car. He asked one of the workers, a man he had known for several years, if he could spare some eggs for his children. The friend had given him half a dozen and Berry left soon after. It was alleged that these were the eggs found in the abandoned car. Evidence was read out from Mrs Kitty Phillips, the moneylender's widow, who was too ill to attend court. At an early remand hearing, she had been asked if she recognised a wallet found in Berry's possession. Identifying it as belonging to her husband, Mrs Phillips turned to look at Berry and cried, "You murderer, you murdered my husband," and in tears she had to be escorted back to her seat. There was great excitement when Irene Wynne was called to the stand. She told the court of the trip to London and how Berry had showered her with expensive gifts and extravagant luxuries. She told her they had stayed in a room costing £1 a night when Berry's income was barely £5 a week. They had bought theatre tickets costing 7 shillings and sixpence each, 2 books costing 20 shillings, over 10 shillings on grapes, plus drinks in the hotel bar and other public houses. All told, Berry had spent over £20 in London. Prosecution's evidence took up 2 days of the trial, and on the third day the defence opened their case by calling Berry to the stand. Dressed in a neat pinstripe suit and with his black hair swept neatly back, Berry was asked by Mr. Edmund Davies, "Did you kill Bernard Phillips?" "No, my lord, I have never seen Mr. Phillips before, nor have I visited the Refuse Lending Society office." Berry was asked about his service in the Merchant Navy, and he told how he had met a man named Greenwood whilst in Fremantle, Australia, shortly before the war. Several years later, he met Greenwood again in London and lent him £15. Berry then said he had last seen Greenwood in Manchester on Wednesday the 2nd of January 1946, when he reminded him he still owed him some money. Greenwood told Berry if he met him in Manchester on the following day, he would repay the loan. They arranged to meet in the morning, and after meeting his friend, Berry returned home shortly after noon. At this time the debt hadn't been repaid, but Berry was asked to meet up with Greenwood later that afternoon when he would receive the money. Berry said he had then met up with Greenwood that afternoon as arranged, and at Greenwood's suggestion they had drove towards Whitchurch where Berry collected the eggs. Berry said that Greenwood didn't have a key for the car and apparently started it with a homemade one which looked like a screwdriver. When Berry met up with Greenwood that afternoon, he wasn't short of money. He said he had collected some money from a Tontine club, sold some poultry and had received £17 from a 40-1 winning bet with an illegal corner bootmaker. Greenwood had then paid him the loan, adding an extra £5 interest for the delay. He peeled off 2 £5 notes and 10 £1 notes from 2 wallets. Berry asked Greenwood if he could spare a wallet, and he was given the one produced in court. Greenwood also gave Berry a lighter, and this too was produced as evidence. Berry said that the dagger he had purchased from a friend had been sold on the following night in a Northwich public house after his wife caught one of the children playing with it. Berry said he sold it to a soldier in a pub for 25 shillings. He couldn't remember which public house it had been, nor the name of the soldier, but he had seen him regularly in the town. In closing the prosecution's case, Mr. Glyn Jones suggested to the jury that the whole story was pure fabrication and could not be substantiated by any facts. In summing up for the defence, Mr. Edmund Davies said that while the case might be deemed a sordid one with the way Berry had acted in relation to his family, such consideration should not affect their judgment when considering a verdict. He also pointed out that not one single witness had identified Berry in the company of Mr. Phillips, except the claim by Miss Germain, evidence which was shown not to be satisfactory. He emphasised that Berry was not short of money, as he had shown in his evidence. Asked to consider their verdict, the jury took just 47 minutes to find Berry guilty as charged. With the black cap draped on his wig, Mr. Justice Stables said, "Harold Berry, the jury has found you guilty of the murder of Bernard Phillips. That is a right and proper verdict. I think you know that you murdered and robbed him of £50. He then sentenced Berry to death. An appeal was immediately launched. Mr. Edmund Davies basing it on the fact that no blood was found on any of Berry's clothing, and also that the murdered man's possessions found on him in the house had been given to him by the mysterious Greenwood. Dismissing the appeal, Lord Goddard, the Lord Chief Justice, said it was a perfectly useless appeal, or praising the judge's thorough summing up. There had been no one hanged at Chester since the late 1800s, with executions in the county of Cheshire taking place at Knutsford Jail. In 1914 the prison was taken over by the military, and since then condemned prisoners were taken to Liverpool or Manchester for execution. Berry was housed in a condemned cell at Manchester Strangeways Jail to await his fate. With his appeal unsuccessful, Berry's last hope was that the Home Secretary would order a reprieve, but 4 days before he was due to hang, the prison governor received word that the law would take its course. At 8 o'clock on Tuesday morning, the 9th of April 1946, Harold Berry was hanged by veteran executioner Thomas Pierpoint and his assistant Henry Critchell. Pierpoint had been a hangman for 40 years and was approaching his 300th execution. He would carry out just 3 more before being pensioned off and replaced. Awaiting execution, one wonders if Berry counted the true cost of his weekend in London's West End. The lives of 2 men, the widowing of 2 women and 4 children left without a father. That was the true cost of Harold Berry and Irene Wynne's 3 nights of passion. My name is Steve Fielding. Thank you for watching and listening to this episode of Tales from the Hangman's Record. If you have enjoyed the video, please press like, and if you don't already, can I ask you to subscribe? Your support keeps the channel on the air. Please check out my website stevefielding.com, where you can find information on all my current and previous books, and also order copies of the 3-volume hardback series The Hangman's Record 1868 to 1964. Available now on Amazon are the first 2 volumes in the Tales from the Hangman's Record series. These feature the transcripts from cases from the YouTube channel, along with extra photographs not used in the videos. These are available as both paperback books and Kindle downloads. Look out for my podcast channel, Tales from the Hangman's Record, and also Mostly Murder, which will feature cases not covered by the scope of the Hangman's Record. Do you agree with the verdict in this case? Please use the comments below for your thoughts, and also for suggestions for other cases to be featured in the Tales from the Hangman's Record series.